Hey y'all, Tim here. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the importance of political activism in fiscal policy. We're also going to be talking about how we have another city who has deceptively lowered rates but raised taxes. And we're going to be talking about Chapter 313 tax abatements. Y'all stay tuned.
Taxpayer Talks is brought to you by Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, and it's only made possible from generous donations from listeners like you. If you want to support our work, you can visit texastaxpayers.com/donate to make a tax-deductible contribution today. Thank you.
Hey y'all, welcome to Taxpayer Talks, the podcast where we hold Austin accountable by keeping taxpayers up to date with news that affects their wallet. My name is Tim 𝗧𝗔𝗬𝗘𝗥 I am president of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. My partner Jeremy Kitchen, our executive director, is out again this week, so we're going to be having a conversation alone. It has been a busy week this week. I was out in Sherman, Texas with the Conservative Men's Club of 𝗧𝗧𝗪 earlier. We spoke about our Texas Prosperity Plan, and it has been a busy week for news. So why don't we jump right into it? All right, well, first up, I wrote an article this week titled The Importance of Political Activism in Fiscal Policy. And, the really reason I came up with this is because as I go out and I speak and I talk to taxpayers and we talk about changing fiscal policy in Texas, there is a number of frustrations with how hard it is to change fiscal policy in Texas. And there's a number of hurdles that need to be overcome on the legislative side. Just through the process, it's extremely hard to pass any bill in the legislature, much less pass some kind of budget reform or property tax reform. That has its own challenges. But what I've found when talking to taxpayers and talking to voters about what they're interested in or about what is making them angry, I have noticed that in fiscal policy, although it's typically taxpayers' number one complaint, it is also not a very sexy topic. Things that get more attention in the news are typically, gun subjects or being pro-life or the gender modification stuff or the border or election integrity. And listen, I don't want to take away from any of that stuff. It's all extremely important, and a lot of that is actually related to fiscal policy. However, when I think back to my time in the legislature, when I was fielding phone calls from constituents, the number one call that we got was on property tax relief and reform. And we can start way back 10 years ago was when I started actually fielding those phone calls. However, we flash forward to now probably 12 years later, and we have made little, if any, progress in that category. Of course, we had the 2019 property tax reform where there were some good reforms made, but ultimately what they pitched to us and what they sold us on, it was taxpayer relief, and that we would see relief in our property tax bills. Well, I don't think I have to tell any of you, we have not seen that relief, and a big surprise, we're not going to see any relief based on that. And so that is why you're already seeing them talk about using these surplus dollars to pay down on school M&O compression rates, something that we have been speaking about for well over a year. But when I go and I talk to people, whether it be about the property tax system, whether it be the budget, or things like the no new revenue rate and local taxes and how they assess taxes in the budget, most of the time I just get people looking at me really glazed over eyes, and it's really boring. And I understand that. Budgets are not the most fun thing to talk about. However, there is probably nothing more important than fiscal policy when it comes to talking about the size and scope of government. And for that reason, I just wrote an article to want to encourage all of y'all out there that without political activism and without fired up grassroots organizations advocating for things like eliminating property taxes or budgetary reform, zero-based budgeting, you name it, without this pressure from political activists on lawmakers, policy simply will not get done. And so I just wanted to encourage grassroots activists to get out there and engage with politicians, engage with lawmakers, engage with your city councils, because without engagement and without letting them know we're watching and we're listening, no policy change will occur. And of course, this is one of the main reasons that we created this podcast. We created the podcast to provide transparency, obviously to report on news and events that are happening that affect taxpayers, but also we want to encourage political activism. We want to encourage you to call your lawmakers. If you go to our website, you can go to the index tab and you can have all of the legislators and how they've scored, really going all the way back to 2007. You also have a lot of explainers and things that will help you understand the process. You can even go in and look at who represents you. And so we try our best to provide as much transparency, not only to who represents you and how they're doing, but on upcoming events and things that are important as we go into the legislative session. We are also going to be keeping you up to date with not only things that we're going to be scoring, fiscal issues and size of government issues that we're going to be scoring, but we're going to be keeping you up to date with the budget. We're going to be keeping you up to date with what's going on with property tax reform. And all of this, there's only one reason for this. We don't do it because we think it's fun. We do it because we think it's important. And we are here, this organization's Texans for Fiscal Responsibility exists to serve one person, and that is the taxpayer. We do not exist to serve lawmakers or to give them information. They have all the information they need. They have all the help that they need, whether it be from lobbyists who probably shouldn't be helping them or a number of different think tanks that are helping them think through policy. But there's not enough organizations that focus on the taxpayer and voters in Texas. And that is our mission. It's at the core of everything we do. And we just want to encourage y'all. If you're not plugged in to fiscal policy, I encourage you to subscribe to our fiscal note. You can go to our website, TexasTaxPayers.com, and let us help join with us in the fight for sane fiscal policy. I encourage you, if you haven't, go read that article, The Importance of Political Activism, on our website. I hope it is a help to you, and I hope we're able to encourage you to engage a lot of the shady stuff that's going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in the local governments, which is what we're going to talk about right now. So in our next piece of news, I wrote about the Fort Worth City Council passing a tax raise on taxpayers. And this comes after many articles we've written. I wrote one about how the 5 biggest cities in Texas, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, Fort Worth, were all using the same strategy to honestly deceive taxpayers. And what they're doing and what they have done is they're required to give notice if they do not lower to the no new revenue rate. And so what all of these cities are doing is saying, hey, listen, we've lowered your rate. Some are saying we've lowered to historic lows. But what they're not telling you is that when they lower these rates, if it's not going to the no new revenue rate, then they are not lowering your taxes. As a matter of fact, if it's not to the no new revenue rate, then they are raising your taxes. And every single one of these city council members knows this. And so when they put out these notices and forget to leave important information like that out, what they are doing is they're actively deceiving voters and taxpayers, getting you excited so you hopefully will not show up to the city council meeting and complain about what's going on and push back and do what we're supposed to do, which is when you're not doing what you said you were going to do when you were elected, which is being fiscally conservatives, to lower taxes, then the answer from the grassroots should be you will lose your position. We will vote you out in this next cycle. But I think especially local governments, whether it be city councils or school boards, they prey on the ignorance of voters. This can manifest in a number of different ways. One of the ways is how elections are done at all. We have nonpartisan, non-uniform elections, and this actually works to the advantage of leftists. And really, if you want to talk about voter suppression, this is probably the biggest voter suppression we have in Texas. Many mayor's races and city council races and school board races are won with like 75 votes or 100 and something votes. And why is that? Well, nobody knows the election is going on. And even that, we really don't even know who's who, because we can't tell which one's the Republican and which one's the Democrat because of deceptive language that they use. And so what I've advocated for is partisan uniform elections. So if we made local elections partisan and you had to declare what type of ideology that you support, whether that be Republican, Democrat, or somewhere in between, or Libertarian, then that would at least help voters to understand who they're voting for. And then, of course, if we moved those secret elections from May to November and made them uniform, we would have a massive amount of more people showing up, and it would eliminate this voter suppression that's going on in these secret elections. The second part to effectively engaging local governments is simply going to be to get educated, to understand the tricks that they are using. And yet again, this is why we exist. I've written multiple articles on this, talking about the no new revenue rate. I've done an explainer on it. But when I go and I speak to people and we talk about it, most of the time I'll ask, does anybody know what the no new revenue rate is? And 90% of people do not. And so it is concerning. This is absolutely how lawmakers deceive voters, whether it be through things like this or shady ballot language. There's all kinds of ways, and it's mainly disengagement and ignorance is what they prey on. And so once again, I encourage you, we should have at this point in the process, we have cities who have mostly passed their budgets. The city of Fort Worth is raising the taxes on its citizens next, and we even have some school boards who are already getting and passing their budgets. And so I encourage you, if your school board has not passed their budget yet, I encourage you to go to the meeting, plug in with your local political groups, and go and demand the no new revenue rate. One last reminder that the no new revenue rate is exactly that. It basically keeps the rate at which there is no raise in taxes, meaning you'd lower the rates and you would keep taxes the same way. So if they adopt the no new revenue rate, that also is not a tax cut. That would be tax neutral. So if they adopted the no new revenue rate, then you would basically be paying the exact same you did last year. And so if you are advocating for a tax cut, they have to go below the no new revenue rate. And that doesn't matter what local political subdivision you're talking about, whether you're talking about cities or school boards or your counties or special purpose districts, they have to go below that threshold. So do not be deceived. Do not believe them when they just tell you they're lowering the rate. If they have not gone past the no new revenue rate, you will have a tax raise. And so let's talk about Chapter 313 is another problem at the local level that most taxpayers are not aware of. So the last piece of news, I wrote another explainer this week on Chapter 313 tax abatements. And the fact that that's what they're named, I think, contributes to the fact that not a lot of people know what we're talking about. And so when I go and I speak to folks and I mention 313 tax abatements, of course, most people yet again kind of look at me and they don't know what I'm talking about. And so I wanted to take a minute to explain exactly what they are. And in simple terms, what Chapter 313 tax abatements are is they are corporate welfare. Essentially, the 313 portion of the tax code is a tax abatement or tax breaks for corporations that school districts can give. The concept behind it is if you bring a certain number of jobs to this area, that if we give you a tax abatement, then you will see that tax money replaced in the jobs that are brought. The reality is that's not what happens at all, and typically we are losing money, and of course the state reimburses the cities through different funds to reimburse the tax losses. And so ultimately taxpayers are still paying with this. There's not some magic bag of money where we get to grab money and throw them at the school districts. It's coming from other places where we are being taxed. And so for this reason, we have, I think in the Republican platform at least, we have called for the abolishment of 313s for years. And I know this go around, both the Democrats and the Republican platform are calling for the end to allow them to expire. And if for those of you who don't know, we actually did not renew Chapter 313 abatements, and they are set to expire December 31st of this year. However, Speaker Dade Phelan has come out and said he is going to revive them again in some new, different form. It looks as though the rumors we're hearing is that they are going to attempt to take out the green energy, because a very large portion of these is us giving tax breaks to unreliable green energy, which of course, if you remember back in 2021, the big freeze and our failure on the grid, the main reason that our grid failed was because of our reliance on wind, which was frozen at the time, and solar, which was covered up in snow at the time. And so those become absolutely useless when the weather is not cooperating and they're not as reliable as some of the fossil fuels. And of course, these ideas are fueled by things like ESG and the attack on fossil fuels and reliable energy. And so what we think they're planning on doing is taking these renewables out and then passing it as well. Now, I've heard a number of different rumors of what's going to happen after that. These are just rumors. We won't know until it happens. I don't have a crystal ball. But I've heard one of the plans is that they take the renewables out, and then they have two separate versions of the bill, and then when they go to conference committee, well, they slip them back in. And this is exactly what they do typically. There's a lot of shady stuff that goes on in conference committees, and so I hope that's not the case. But yet again, the way that we battle these is by educating ourselves on what they are, and then putting pressure on lawmakers to do the right thing. And the way we do that is by knowing what we're talking about. And so if you don't yet fully understand Chapter 313 tax abatements, one, know that they are corporate welfare. Know that they mainly exist to prop up unreliable green energy. And ultimately, they steal money from taxpayers. And if you don't know, I encourage you to go to our website, look at the explainer that I have. There's some information on the comptroller's website it technically defines what they are, but it doesn't tell you the reality behind it. We have also heard rumors that because these are expiring, there has been a slew of them being renewed and contracts extended to indefinite periods of time. We are currently investigating that right now. I don't know if there's truth behind that or not, but soon you will see. We will have a report on that and let you know exactly what's going on with them. We do have a link in the article that I wrote to all of the Chapter 313 tax abatements and what companies they're going to, how much money, and so there's a plethora of information. All I have for you this week. I appreciate you being with us. We look forward to Jeremy joining us again next week. Y'all have a great week, and we will see you again next Thursday at 5:30. Y'all have a great day.
As a quick reminder, make sure to check out our newly redesigned webpage at TexasTaxPayers.com. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our weekly email, The Fiscal Note, to stay up to date on issues that affect Texas taxpayers. We'll see you next time.